In the top end of Australia, wild buffaloes are a valuable source of income and food, but they're also a pest. It's estimated more than 100,000 buffaloes are roaming the Northern Territory, devastating valuable floodplains and destroying native flora and fauna. But a new GPS tracking program is attempting to better understand the feral introduced animals and how to manage them. Eliana Lawford reports from Darwin.
Flying low and fast in a helicopter beside a herd of 800-kilogram animals in the wild is dangerous work. Even when a buffalo is tranquilised, the risks are still high. This is very practical but dangerous science.
I guess it's important just to know your enemy, like that old saying. So buffalo are quite a big pest, and they're becoming a more serious problem, especially out in Arnhem Land. So the better we understand our foe, the better we can combat it.
From the small community of Jabiru in the top end, a team including a pilot, a wildlife vet, a scientist and a park ranger are hunting in Kakadu for feral water buffalo. Coming in low, they spot some, and things are going to get serious very quickly for them and the animals. The buffaloes are panicked and are braking for the safety of the trees, and the pilot tries to muster them away. With practiced skill, the pilot manoeuvres the chopper so the wildlife vet can get a clear shot to fire a tranquiliser dart containing a special anaesthetic agent brought in from Africa.
Feral animals, and buffalo in particular, damage habitat for native species. Kakadu has quite a large volume of endemic and species of high conservation value, and so for us to reduce threats like buffalo and other feral animals is highly beneficial to native flora and fauna.
Once they're sure the buffalo is sedated, the team gets to work, all the while looking out for other wild animals.
Broadly, the dangers are twofold. There's a big human health component. Obviously, we're working with big, dangerous animals, potentially dangerous animals. We're working with very potent capture drugs, and we're working in an environment that potentially is unpredictable.
It seems strange for an animal that's considered a pest, but the vet takes the downed buffalo's health and welfare very seriously. Ben Bryant wants this buffalo to return to life as normal after this encounter. So he checks vital signs and ensures it's cool.
Her oxygen saturation's 92%, her heart rate's 59 beats a minute. She's pretty stable, she's well restrained, and yeah, you're good to whack that collar on, mate.
This is really what all this effort and expense is about, using a GPS tracking collar that will stay on for a year to track what the buffaloes are doing.
Most of the time that we're culling animals or relocating animals, we don't know what impact they're having. So we could be spending too much money culling too many animals, or we could be not spending enough.
The collar is bolted on while the buffalo sleeps. Once finished, the animal's given a reversing agent to counter the anaesthesia. The vet lingers to see the buffalo wake up before rushing back to the chopper. Once the reversing agent kicks in, 90 seconds is all the team has to get to safety.
Buffalo populations don't exist in isolation, so there is migration to and from different herd groups, as well as the males, which are spreading across pretty much the entire top end and further.
Buffaloes were introduced to the Northern Territory in the 1800s to provide working animals and meat for remote northern settlements. When those settlements were abandoned, the animals were released into the wild and their numbers exploded. A rough estimate from a recent survey indicates there are probably about 7,000 buffaloes in Kakadu alone.
If you take into consideration the other aerial surveys that have been conducted in the last 2 or 3 years, you're probably looking at 100 to 150,000 in the top end currently.
They've had a major effect on the environment. Floodplains that should be smooth as bowling greens now have craters where the beasts wallow.
There's obviously the physical damage, buffalo wallowing and their pads down to water holes and whatnot, and that can have various effects. Saltwater intrusion is one of the impacts there. Obviously, potential threats like disease transmission is a concern.
They broke down natural wetland barriers, fouled water, trampled the soil, removed habitat for a lot of the native animals, and kind of instigated this big change in the savanna dynamics of the northern savanna.
There is a buffalo meat industry in the Territory and a live export trade which started more than 40 years ago. It's supplied by farmed buffaloes bred on top-end pastoral land. The industry is setting new records with a new market to Vietnam. Last year, 5,000 head were sent. This year, the industry looks on track to repeat that. But the economic effects of wild buffaloes can also be disastrous for nearby pastoralists, with fences wrecked and stock on the loose. In 2014, Landline reported on the Fisher family, who've been in the buffalo business since the very beginning.
Arnhem Land and places like that, parks, land, they've shot to waste. There was obviously nowhere to send the animals, so they've just had a culling operation. But hopefully that will turn around because it generates income to the landholder.
This latest research is targeted at developing more effective culling programs of buffalo, but scientist Stuart Pittard thinks it could also benefit business.
There are differing ideas about how to best use the buffalo because they are seen as a resource and in some senses they are culturally important to certain groups. So it is a fairly tricky management situation, and I hope that having more information out there so we can properly understand what impacts the buffalo are having on land will just enable everybody to sit down at the same table and come to a compromise where a compromise is required. And you can see up here it ranges quite widely, and then you've got others in this area where it's kind of a little tighter.
It's about providing hard facts that aren't in dispute for everyone, conservationists and farmers. Data is, after all, a valuable commodity. Stuart's work will finally give stakeholders solid figures to work with.
Allow people who are more interested in harvesting the animals for monetary gain to put a detailed case forward to say that if they keep the animals at a certain density, then they shouldn't have the large environmental impacts that could be observed. At the moment, it's a lot of hearsay, so having that information will benefit all parties regardless of their management goals.
Up to 3,000 buffaloes that roam Aboriginal land across Arnhem Land are culled every year. Rangers use helicopters and high-powered rifles. Often the meat is provided to nearby Indigenous communities. But buffalo numbers have been steadily increasing and culling efforts aren't keeping up. What does the research tell you about possibilities for culling programs?
The research has found major population centres across the park, and to be effective you need to coordinate culling programs to hit all spots at the same time. Otherwise, if you're just taking chunks out of it, it's going to be quite ineffective in reducing their growth rates in the long term. So ideally we'd like a coordinated culling program across the entire park, and also perhaps in areas which are adjoining to the park, such as the Mary River National Park as well as Arnhem Land.
Once again, the GPS tracking team is on the hunt. Another herd is spotted, and the chopper is manoeuvred for a clear shot. Once the target is down, the other animals hesitate, not wanting to leave a member of the herd, but the fear of the hovering chopper becomes too much. The procedure begins again. The team are very particular about who they target.
Yeah, so the idea is that we collar one animal in a group, and then that should be indicative of the herd behaviour. So not just the individual, but the entire herd.
The buffalo's health is checked and samples are taken, and another easily identifiable collar is attached.
This is a commonly hunted herd, so we're just marking them so they're not going to be shot, pretty much.
The vet is worried about the buffalo's health.
Yeah, this animal's just auscultating her heart or listening to her heart as part of her examination. I can hear that she has an abnormal heart rhythm. Some of the time, most of the time her heart's beating normally, but every occasionally I can hear an abnormal series of beats. So, you know, that probably increases the risk of anaesthesia a little bit for her, so we'll make sure we get her up as quick as we can.
The men work fast. The encounter finishes again, with the reversing agent being injected and the buffalo waking up. But if this team has its way, the animal's future and that of its herd is far from rosy.